Hi everyone, this is Stephanie from Archive Social, and we're going to get started in just about 1 minute. Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Stephanie from Archive Social, and welcome to how the city of Mont Belvieu responsibly grew its social media following by 40% in 1 year. Today we're featuring Brian Ligon. He is the Communications and Marketing Director from the city of Mont Belvieu, Texas. So just to start off with a few housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute. Feel free though to use the question function to submit questions, and there will be time for Q&A throughout the presentation. So if you submit a question and you don't hear back from us right away, we'll definitely address it after the presentation. And then lastly, the webinar is being recorded and you will receive a copy via email after the presentation. So today's agenda, we are going to start off with a great case study from Mont Belvieu, Texas, responsible social media growth with Brian. And then we'll do a quick recap and guidance and talk about some options for responding to records requests with Anil Chawla from Archive Social. And then lastly, I'll be moderating a Q&A between Anil and Brian and you. So please put your questions in, and we are looking forward to having a good conversation. All right, so a little bit about our speaker. We're really excited to have Brian on today. He is the Director of Communications for City of Mont Belvieu. And before his career in public service, he actually had a very long career as an award-winning writer and producer and a syndicated radio host, which I think you'll all be able to tell from his voice because he has a perfect radio voice. And so spent 17 years in broadcast television and then the last 7 years in government communications. So he comes to us actually from the city of Round Rock, right outside of Austin. He spent a couple of years there, moved to Mont Belvieu, took it over. And it has been 1 year that he has been at Mont Belvieu. So I think his work anniversary was January 8th. So he's going to tell us a great story about his first year at Mont Belvieu and everything that he accomplished in that first year. It's been a great story for us to hear, and I think it's going to be really useful for you too. Also, a nice bit of trivia. He has a wealth of useless trivia knowledge, just maybe he'll share some of it with us. All right. So with all that said, Brian, thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome.
I'm going to switch the screen control over to you, and I'll let you get started.
Fantastic. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I am really honored I'm very honored to, let's see, let me make sure you guys are seeing the right thing. Hold on. Y'all see my presentation here?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Let's see. You should be seeing, oh, there we go. Now, there we go. Sorry about that,
Perfect.
guys. There we go. Sometimes, you know, working with two monitors is great, but then when you get to stuff like this, sometimes it throws you a curveball. But it is great to be with you guys this afternoon. And hey, put in the chat where everybody's from. I'm kind of curious to see where everybody is from. But yeah, I've been with the city of Mont Belvieu for exactly a year now. January 8th was my anniversary, and I've had a pretty cool journey. I started my career in government communications with the city of Round Rock. I was there for 5.5 years as the multimedia specialist for the city of Round Rock. After I left a 17-year career in broadcasting. And Round Rock has a very vibrant social media presence. The staff there are still just such dear, wonderful friends and mentors to me. And I learned so much from them working with that department, and creating the multimedia pieces that would be featured mainly in our social feed. Uh, Round Rock has a city staff of about 800 and a communications staff of 5. So I made the move last January from Round Rock down to the third coast, as we call it, down here just outside of Houston in Mont Belvieu. And their social media was a little bit different. It was not the big vibrant presence that I was used to. They had Facebook. They didn't use Facebook, and I'll talk more about that as we go through as I go through my presentation. And that is, there's a difference. You can have all the social media channels you want, but are you using the social media channels that you have? It's two different things. And so I would classify their social media presence as intermittent. I went from a city staff of 800 to a city staff of 80. And the communication staff, well, that's just me. So I had a few challenges that lay ahead, and it is different. It's Round Rock to Mont Belvieu is a little different, but it's been a good change, and that's what I want to focus on today. So a little bit about Mont Belvieu, my new hometown. We always have a rainbow like that. It's always puppy dogs and rainbows here. We are 30 miles outside of Houston. We're the third fastest growing area in the Houston metro, according to the Houston Business Journal. Our home starts are through the roof, and we're working hard to keep up with that growth. But as we bring more population, that means that there's more people that need to know what's going on in the city. So it became vital that they fill this role in this chair that I'm in now, to help keep our residents engaged and informed. Our population is right about 8,000, and we process about 85%, or we do process 85% or more of the nation's natural gas liquids. Talk about useless trivia. If you're looking on the securities exchange or the commodities exchange for natural gas liquids, you're not going to look for NGL. You actually look for BLVU. So what happens in Mont Belvieu, the prices and everything that are set for natural gas liquids in Mont Belvieu sets the price and the standard for the world. So there you go. I told you I was a wealth of useless knowledge. And we are also the first city in Texas to have a municipal internet utility. So I've helped launch, I've had to learn a whole lot about broadband and internet technology in a very short amount of time. So we are on Facebook. We have a city account, a fire department, and a police department account, and that's all pretty well managed by a team of one, and that is me. And my goal is to post at least once a day from the city's main account, and I want to do that in a strategic way. I will say that prior to me getting here, it was, every 12, 14 maybe days, maybe longer, that the city would post. They would just throw something out there, usually a PDF if it was a visual of some kind of flyer that they got from the county about flu shots or something, and then people would ask questions and there would be no answer. And it was generally whenever it came across the person's desk, because it was handled by the assistant city manager, it was handled by the city secretary, and they have other things to do. So I certainly don't blame them, because as we all know on this call or in this webinar, handling social media, it's if it's not your full-time job, it sure feels like it. So I try to be strategic and get these posts at high traffic times, so that we can be a little more strategic. Especially with what's going on across the nation right now, I think this is an appropriate post. I know our residents, whenever they hear the words freezing temperatures, that's pretty well what they look like, because down here near the Texas coast, 75 is cold. So um, yeah, and so we've done a lot. We have done a lot in a year, and as you can see, I come from a video background. I still love producing multimedia content and video. Um, Prior to me getting here, the lower right hand corner, that was it. And so even in the hustle and bustle, I'm still finding some time to crank out some videos and make sure that we're engaging our residents in that way. It's new for them. It was very new for them to be able to see uh, and have their city engage with them in that way. They really weren't used to it. But I'm happy to say that now they kind of expect the videos to come. Um, so Facebook followers, and I'm going to talk mainly about Facebook today, and it's because that's where our residents are. It became readily apparent to me as soon as I got here and started kind of looking at the communication channels um, that long before my arrival here, the city as a whole had decided we're going to be on Facebook. There really is no next door presence here. I've only had a couple of people ask me about the possibility of Twitter. Um, every neighborhood has a very active Facebook group. There are a couple of active mommy blogs. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And then of course the city accounts. And people would try to engage with them. So pre-January 18th, or the day I sat down, I took a look, and we were just under 6,000 followers on our Facebook page. And then our Facebook followers, as of this month, we're now at over 10,500. So is because we don't do the kind of post that I have the big red X through, where we say about two generic sentences and post up a very wordy PDF that we all know Facebook dumps that in kind of in the trash. They weight that in a negative way, and you can see it got one like, it got one thumb up, it got one share from at that time, you're talking about an audience of around 6,000 people, and it just was, or this was from 17, so it was probably around 4 or 5,000 at that time, and that's all the engagement it got. And then, as you can see, October 4th of 18, we hit 10,000. So how did I get there? Well, I guess I did inherit some problems. I have a local mommy blogger, what's going on in Mont Belvieu. And she honestly filled the void that was being left within our community. She was more or less became the de facto source of information in the city. A lot of it was accurate, but a lot of it wasn't. A lot of it was, well, I heard, and that's not good. And that's all. And you would see that in the comments. Something would go out with as mostly fact or mostly accurate, and then it would be, well, I heard that this group was doing it. Well, I heard we're getting this restaurant. Well, I heard, and then it would fire off this big long conversation, and none of it was productive because none of it was real. So that was the biggest challenge, and that is that our citizens, our residents of Mont Belvieu had, in our surrounding area, had nowhere to turn for accurate and reliable information. And so I had a lot of trust and bridge building and everything that I had to do very quickly. So in the past, I got to be honest, and look at, when I sat down, I went through and started reading the city's Facebook page. And even prior to coming here, as I was researching the city during my application process, I started reading the city's Facebook page. And I could tell that our residents just felt like they were shouting down a well when they were trying to communicate with the city. And you would get PMs sent to the city. You would get questions sent to the city, but receiving an answer was very rare. even during Hurricane Harvey, which of course taxed a lot of resources in this region. Um, People were desperate for information, and they were getting just nuggets. They were getting info nuggets. And it's because the staff that was here, that's what they had time for. But the residents wanted and needed engagement to get the resources and help and information that they desperately desired, and it wasn't happening. So, like I said, there was going to be some trust building that had to happen. So, how did I do that? I set a new policy for myself, and that was I'm going to respond to every appropriate comment. And does it take time? You bet it does. But if you do it, and I remember that first day, somebody posted some. I made a post. Someone fired off a comment, and I was like, "Hey, Alice, thank you for reaching out to us. I hear your frustration. We were, and I don't remember what it was, and I kind of got this. Oh, uh, respond. I didn't expect you, and I've had multiple people say I didn't expect you to respond, but now the expectation is that we'll respond and that we're going to have this conversation. And so we get even something as simple as breakfast. Who doesn't love breakfast? I'm really fortunate that our city at our rec center owns a great grill. I mean, look at, do you not? I'm hungry now. Actually, I guess I should have eaten before the webinar started, but now I'm sitting here staring at this plate of food and it looks delicious. But I get 19 shares out of a plate of eggs and pancakes, and you get comments. You get people asking, "Hey, Saturdays we would love to go here instead of Baytown for breakfast." And I said, "Hey, unfortunately it's weekdays right now, but we feel where you're coming from. We'll pass that along." And that's me. Fingers crossed. I would like to take my family to the grill on Saturday morning rather than seeking out a place to go eat that's not in Mont Belvieu. That's the kind of thing, and I got a love out of that. She fired back with a not just a like but a love, and I'm proud of that. Every time I get the heart, I always feel a little bit of pride. It's like, hey, they really do like me. But it's having those conversations, even about breakfast, even something as simple as a plate of eggs and bacon, just keeping them engaged in that conversation, whether it's street resurfacing, recycling, or a plate of breakfast. It matters. It matters. So part of that is that I've realized the city didn't really have a voice. Most of our posts, like I said, were very brief, and were kind of, and no disrespect to if my bosses end up watching this webinar once it's recorded, it kind of read like a police report. A lot of times there wasn't that engagement. We weren't talking how people talk all the time, and so that kind of goes against what Mont Belvieu is, and you guys know what your city is, and here we have a very at-home feel. It's a very hometown atmosphere. Despite our growth, we're working very hard to keep that hometown atmosphere. So I recognize that, and I did establish that in establishing a voice within our social posts at every appropriate time. Now, you get into an emergency thing, all bets are off. It's going to read like a police report because I just need people to know the facts and stay away from here. So we were consistent. I always answered, and I tried to be helpful. If even when you want to roll your eyeballs and go, just get it on the website. Well, our website wasn't all that great either. That's a different story for a different day. But I had to go through updating our website. But if I didn't know an answer, I'd say, hold on. I'm going to go talk to the director of that department, and I'll get an answer from the top, and I'll give it to you. And that's what I did. Um, and then the other part of that was I always try to work to a yes. I'm always trying to get them to turn around. Now, let me tell you, we being that we now own an internet utility, you think people get mad about their trash collection and their water being shut off? Try about when the internet doesn't work, or at least doesn't work the way they want it to, and they kind of flip out. So as soon as they start bad mouthing MB Link, that's our network, then I do that social listening, and I'm like, hey, I see you're upset. Hold on. Have you tried this? Let me go get your name. And while you're trying that, let me go talk to somebody. I'm going to have our customer service reps reach out to you. Let me get your, and I take their name, because we look them up through their, I look at their name, and that means that we have, if they have MB Link, that means they have our utility services, our water and trash and everything too. So I just, I feed that to my customer service reps, and they reach out on the back end. And then all of a sudden, and it's happened more than once, where I get on the same thread where they have been just killing us, they'll turn back around and go, oh my gosh, this is amazing, best customer service ever. They reached out to me, they fixed my issue, it works better than ever, I'm keeping MB Link forever. Forget the national networks. I love my city. That's all I need if I can turn them around. Here's a few examples of finding our voice. We had Rob Roca, who's a local realtor here in town. He was on Wheel of Fortune, so we had to make hay out of that. And but I couldn't just say congratulations to Rob Roca for being on Wheel of Fortune today. It's like that. It's like a police report about Rob being on Wheel of Fortune. But what do? We turn it on its head. The category is place. We'd like to solve the puzzle, Pat. It's Mont Belvieu, Texas, the place where Rob is from. So, and then I also have found found a new skill, which is using meme generators to come up with memes. In November, we had a little, everyone was all freaked out because it was gonna get quote unquote cold, and I don't even remember now. I think that meant it was gonna hit 50. And I was kind of having a good laugh about it, and I thought, I can just picture someone on a Tauntaun going down Eagle Drive, which is our main thoroughfare in town, riding a Tauntaun down Eagle Drive, and now I've been able to develop that rapport to where now my residents play along. Look, Susan chimed in and she goes, "Do you know the internal temperature of a Tauntaun? Lukewarm." And if you're a sci-fi nerd like me, that's incredibly hilarious. So I thought that was great, and then her reply got 5 engagements. So now the residents are engaging with each other within these conversations because of the voice, because they feel at ease enough to come on into a thread. And but we still got the weather information that we needed to get to them out. So I use that voice, and I always try to post some kind of visual. As we know, visual posts always do better. If you're not using Canva, load it on your city phone. Canva. There's an app, and then you can go to canva.com. I would suggest paying the small fee, the per year fee, to have the pro. That way you can load your logos and all that, your city logos and things like that up, and they live on the Canva cloud, and then it's very easy for you to make graphics on the go. I was actually out of town speaking at a conference, and I guess mid last year, and I got the unfortunate news that just a little bit south of us, in one of our neighboring cities of Santa Fe, Texas, there had been a tragic school shooting. Of course, we wanted to reply and show our support for one of our neighboring cities, but I was kind of stuck. I was kind of on the road. I'm in the back of an Uber when I find this out, going to this conference, and so I sat there with my Canva app and made a graphic. We stand with Santa Fe in the back of an Uber, saved it to my camera roll, did my Facebook Pages app, got my, wrote it, attached the graphics, sent, and we were able to show that support and respond quickly. So if you're not using Canva, do it, because then you get easy graphics like these, and it makes having those visually engaging posts very easy. Trash truck trouble, I think that happened. I think that was another one I did on my phone. And then, and you can do things that are, and people get weird about their trash here. I don't know about your city. Do people get weird about their trash? Because here people get weird about their trash. And so we try to make sure everybody's very informed about their trash. And we made sure that with folks, when we had to make sure we started this campaign, Space It Out, my public works director came to me and said, hey, we really need to, we need to make sure people have 3 feet between their cans if they have more than one can. And he goes, it's not hard to do. I mean, it's just, they just need to do it. And I said, yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science. They just need to space it out. And then the light bulb went on in my head, which I was like, wait, space, rocket science. It's not rocket science. Space it out, MB. And then I made the little graphic. It did great. I had, I guess when I did the screen grab, at least about 2,600 people were reached by that and got quite a bit of engagement. 14 shares on a trash post. I can't ask for more. I can't ask for more than that. So as we grew, it obviously created more public records within social media. Even though we're really focused on just one platform, the audience that's larger than our city limits population, because we engage our effective area, we're really the only truly incorporated area that has any services within this part of the county. So all these other small towns look to us and they engage with us. And so now everybody out in our ETJ, in our service area, in our larger area, they're engaging with this, not just people within the direct city limits of Mont Belvieu. But as we grew, we did create a lot more public records out on social media. So I talked with my CMs and worked on getting funding for this year's budget for Archive Social. And that got, and I kept getting asked, do we really need it? Do we really need it? Do you think we really need it? And I said, yes, I think we do. So there's going to come a point where something's going to happen. And I said, and I don't want to not be prepared, because if this is how we're going to communicate, if this is where we're going to be, and this is where we're going to live outside of our city website, if this is our other big push, then we need to be prepared. So I had this, I want to show you guys an example. Now this was fun. So I had to get out the holiday trash pickup schedule. I told you people are freaky about their trash, and it did well. I mean, it had a reach of 3,600 people. I had 940 engagements on a thing about trash. Why? Because I didn't want to read or write another post about a trash schedule, so I wrote a poem instead. And so I thought I was being super creative, and I wrote this wonderful little poem, and you can read it yourself right there. I won't read it to you. I did love Sarah Robinson, one of our residents. She commented, this rhyme is killing it, and so I took a little pride. I was all happy about that. There's one problem though. In the original post, I said montbelvieu.com, because you know why? Because it rhymes with dabomb.com. And so I thought I was but here's the problem. We're montbelvieu.net. Wah, wah. Yeah, sorry. And you would think, as the communications director, I would be super sensitive to that. But I got so into my wonderful my little poem writing that the rhyme became a little more, I guess I thought I was being so clever. But that got pointed out because now our residents do expect, they know and they expect accurate information, and they don't have a problem telling me if there's a problem, if I've made a mistake. So as you can see, old Chad Morrison cropped up and he said, you mean montbellevue.net? Yeah, I was like, oh yeah. So I went and adjusted my little poem and figured out how to rhyme to .net. And then I replied, and then before I could reply to him, someone else decided, oh yeah, Chad pointed out the problem, but I need to be snarky. And they said, old Sean Fisher down there, he said, one job, City of Mont Belvieu, you had one job. And then he too put a link to montbellevue.net. So I replied to my first resident that caught my mistake, and as you can see, I said, yes, guess I should have focused on being correct and less on my rhyme. I'm sure I'll get it right next time. Thanks for the catch. You're truly a gent. I'm glad you were able to know what I meant. And as you can see, my reply got 14 engagements. His original snarky comment had none. But when old Sean saw that I had replied to, that not only did I correct the post, but I had replied to Chad and did so with style, and then also that the residents were engaging with what I had to say, even admitting fault, he went and deleted his comment. So the reason I have his comment to be able to show you is because of Archive Social. But it did illustrate to me that had this been something serious, a real issue, not me being cute, being wrong, correcting it, and then these guys being snarky, if it had been a real issue, I would have been uncovered had I not had Archive Social. So I do think that that is part of having that engagement and being prepared to have a larger audience. Like Peter Parker found out when he became Spider-Man, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. So I had to, you know, this drove the point home to me. So as you can see, the result of what of kind of this strategy that I've put together for Mont Belvieu over the last year, we do have a more informed public and a much larger audience. I did take I took a fair portion of the mommy bloggers audience. I see there are way fewer. There are way fewer city questions on her side or on her page because they know they can come to the source for those questions and answers. When I do see city stuff on her end, things start with a lot fewer things start with, well, I heard, and I'm not seeing those comments in our section either. And I told my city manager when I started, I said, I can't hardly stand this. Well, I heard, I can't. And I said, my goal by year one should be like an 80% reduction in well, I heard comments that start with well, I heard. So I'm happy to say that that goal that I set for myself, I've been able to achieve. And people do expect to see accurate information on our Facebook page, and they do get upset when it's not there. So that's what it looks like, folks. 10,000 likes in a city with about 8,000 residents, and I'm proud of the story that I have to tell and to share. And that's not because I've done anything great. It's because I've had great teachers, and I've been able to capitalize on that, and I'm glad I'm able to share that with you. So these are the four things I would ask if you had nuggets to take away, other than the fact that this guy talks a lot, and he's kind of a nerd because he keeps talking about like Star Wars and comic book stuff. But other than those two nuggets, what I would say is love your haters, but love your community more. You got to engage with those trolls, and you can see that it does pay off. But do it when it benefits your community, and know when to say when. Know when to leave those negative folks behind and focus on the people that matter. And those are the people that are loving and supporting your city as much as you do. I'm fortunate that I don't just work for Mont Belvieu. I'm a resident of Mont Belvieu, so I do care about this community. It's my home, and so that does drive a lot of what I do on social is that love for my new hometown. Have a voice. Make sure it's a voice that doesn't sound like a police report, but it's one that's true to your community. Be consistent. Be consistent with your visual. Be consistent with your voice. Be consistent with how often you post, when you post, so that people can build. They know what to expect from you. And then certainly have a plan, because if you'll do those things, you're going to grow your audience. You're going to grow that impact, and you're going to extend that reach. And when you do, that means there's more coming back. There's going to be more records, and you need to make sure you have a plan to retain your social media. So that's what I've got, guys.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Brian. That was just great. I really love all the examples you shared, and it's clear that you take the risks to be funny and to be warm, and that really shines through in your social media management for your community. And I can see that your community is enjoying having you be the voice of Mont Belvieu. So love the examples. Love the example too about the trash post and the fact that, hey, that could have been something, and it kind of alerted you to the fact that, maybe next time this won't go so well. So to that end, I want to bring on Anil Chawla, who is the CEO and founder of Archive Social. And he's going to talk a little bit about some similar situations to what Brian brought up, except situations that kind of had slightly different outcomes, as well as just some background on public records and social media. So welcome, Anil. And we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you all for joining us here on this Tuesday. And of course, a big thank you to you, Brian, for joining us. I have to say happy anniversary to you, a little belated anniversary here, but 1 year in, it's pretty amazing the impact that you've made. And I think it speaks both to your efforts and your capabilities, as well as the value of social media in government and the way that you put your arms around it, decided to define that voice, and echo a lot of Stephanie's comments. The story that you share here had a number of takeaways in it. For me personally, the analogy of your citizens shouting down a well, the simple policy of respond to every legitimate comment. Again, simple, not necessarily easy, but definitely simple. And we've seen that time and time again, agency to agency, no matter what kind of agency, what size, that people do want to be heard. They do want to engage with government. It can be very, very positive, and it should be. And these are the simple, not necessarily easy, but simple ways to do that. And these are the steps to take. So again, thank you for sharing your story, Brian. And to transition to that point about being proactive and thinking about the protection of your agency, I want to spend just a few minutes while all the folks on the line, I know you have questions for Brian. Please go ahead and put those in the questions box. I want to take a few minutes to dive deeper into the legal and policy side of things here, particularly around public information requirements, and take a step back from an educational perspective. For those of you who are really excited about social media, maybe you're already very active on it, maybe you're striving to do what Brian did this past year, and you see the benefits. We have to remember that anything so important also bears risk. Just like government itself, you're so important in people's lives that you often find yourself in legal situations and uncomfortable, unexpected situations, sometimes crisis situations. So how do we cover our agencies but from a policy and legal perspective so that you can engage in the way that Brian does in Mont Belvieu? And particularly, one thing that I thought, just one more note on Brian's presentation that really struck a chord with me was you all could hear from this presentation the personality that Brian brings to the table, and that personality shines straight through to the social media. So there's that authenticity, there's that humanity, it personalizes the agency, and it really, really works, except for the occasional time when it doesn't. And there's somebody out there where things don't click, and they can be a thorn in your side. So how do you protect your agency? So again, I want to take just a few minutes to provide some guidance. As Stephanie said, we have a few more case studies from across the nation around legal and policy, give you some high-level actionable items on how to think about protecting your agency and records from a record standpoint. So I'll dive through that. Now, a lot of folks, hopefully on the line, are familiar with social media as a public record. In whatever state you're in right now, every state has a public records law. Many years ago, when we started working with the industry on this issue, with our focus on social media and government, that being our exclusive focus, we did a lot of education around social media being a record. We surveyed our audiences when we did these presentations, and lo and behold, after 5 or 6 years, it's pretty obvious. You see it in the news all the time, whether it's a natural disaster or a mass shooting, is there any kind of touchy circumstance, the news media turns to social media to share what's happening. Obviously, journalists rely heavily on public information avenues in order to request that information, but also citizens are requesting that information. So very, very clear understanding across the country that social media is public record, just like your email. That being said, if you're not as familiar with the requirements, I did want to point you to this map that we created. It's at bit.ly/SM public records, that nice short social media URL for you to go to, and click on your state. And we have the latest and greatest guidance from your state. So if you're in Georgia, you can go to the Georgia page and see the latest guidance there, information from the Georgia Technology Authority talking about social media as a record. Each and every state, we've consolidated that information. And many of the states across the nation have added clarity around the public records law, which has been there for decades. The law doesn't have to say anything about social media to make it a record. It's pretty clear. But many of the states have come out with very clear guidance around social media as a record and your retention requirements. And so if you're in Texas like Brian, if you're in California, all of these states have very clear guidance. So I encourage you to check this out, see the latest and greatest from your state in terms of what needs to be done around social media being a record. But I want to take it past the on-paper requirements to what's happening in reality and some of the real case studies. And Brian alluded to the possibility of a records request with that trash collection issue conversation that generated a lot of engagement, which is great. But that there was that set of folks that pointed out that there was a little error in the URL and then the deleted comments, right? The information that disappeared, that could have been an issue. Well, across the nation, it has been an issue in a number of different places. And so a great example out of Texas as well is from Dripping Springs, Texas. They actually had a news article published early last year around deciding to do something about record keeping, because this small town, under 4,000 in population, by April of last year had already received 4 records requests for social media content. And in the article, the city secretary talks about how they try to take screenshots, right? If you're going to delete something, if that's going to happen, or you see something really concerning, maybe you've been taking screenshots. Good practice, better than nothing. But you can't predict when something's going to disappear. I'm sure Brian couldn't predict when that citizen came back and just deleted their comment. You oftentimes don't even know that someone came back and edited or deleted. And by the way, if you reply to citizens and then they delete their original comment, it deletes your replies, right? And so the city pointed out that, hey, listen, this content, we've had these 4 records requests, but deleted content is such a concern. We need to do something about it. So again, I encourage you to check that out. And again, it doesn't matter what size agency you are important to people's lives. Social media is probably important to how you communicate with them. And therefore, you need to have your bases covered from a policy and record keeping standpoint. And I'll give you one other example, a different part of the country, Duarte, California. This actually came out of the latter half of 2018. And very similar to this topic of trash collection. It may or may not be the most exciting, although you saw the engagement on there. It certainly was important to people. In Duarte, they were looking at a fireworks ban, as a proposed fireworks ban. And of course, that created a lot of controversy. And of course, there's good, valid reasons for doing that. And there's, of course, valid concerns there. Here in North Carolina, I have to drive across the state lines to South Carolina if I want to get fireworks. So I understand some of the pain there. Created a lot of conversation. And in fact, as the city was posting about this on social media, all that controversy happened. They actually did receive a records request related to social media content. And it really speaks to social media oftentimes being the primary channel. You may be reposting to kick things off, but that's where the conversation happens. That's where people are. That's where they're providing feedback, concerns. Maybe other citizens are commenting and providing information that may or may not be accurate. You may have to clarify that. People editing, deleting, all that happens on social media. That's where people are and want to be heard from you as an agency. And as you heard from Brian, that's changed the game in terms of his following and his engagement by responding back. Well, again, all that happens on social media, and then you get a records request. So again, the city fortunately had record-keeping practices in place and could respond to it. But for those of you in California, or even if you're not, it's worth recognizing that in California, prior to this records request, there had been some serious headlines in California around social media as a record. One good example, and I don't have a slide for this, but I'll talk to it. City of San Mateo, California had a lawsuit, literally a lawsuit just a year prior, where a citizen noticed that the city did not have any policy for retaining social media and actually filed a lawsuit as part of the lawsuit pointing out that social media was not being maintained as a record. So again, you can be caught in a situation where you need to produce the content, or simply that citizens become savvy enough where they try to call you on it. And oftentimes, some of the more problematic citizens are just looking for an avenue to catch you when you're not ready or not prepared, and to point out that you're not doing what you should be doing. And so again, fortunately in these cases, Dripping Springs and both Duarte were able to get ahead of the issue and are in a great spot where they can focus on the benefits of social media. So what I wanted to do is provide you some high-level guidance around how to think about social media record keeping. I am going to review a few different options here for you. If you're not doing anything to keep records today, my one ask to you is to think about that in the context of your social media and how important it is to your city, and come up with some action plan regardless of what it is. Obviously, we play in the space of providing record keeping, but if it's not us, pick something to do. Protect your city so that you can continue to have benefits of social media. And these records requests won't become a distraction or a disturbance. Now, I want to give you some context around why this issue can be challenging, and then I'm going to give you again some actionable guidance that hopefully makes this a lot easier for you. Remember that with social media, unlike anything else, unlike your email, unlike your websites, even unlike your text messages, this is data that sits with entities that have no regard or consideration for public records. It sits with Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. These aren't bad companies. These are private companies, though, that have a different mission. They have no obligation to public records law. So again, when you're on Facebook and engaging with citizens, that back and forth content can be deleted or edited at any time without your knowledge, without your consent. And by the way, people can just quit Facebook. And when they do that, all of their content goes away. There's all sorts of ways that this information disappears. And unlike almost anything else, social media is completely outside of your control. So most of the records laws and guidance that I pointed to in that map, most of the states that have addressed it have put out guidance saying you need to do something to get this information in your control. Not only is this information with third parties, but they're constantly changing. If you use Facebook, you know it changes all the time, sometimes for the better, maybe sometimes not for the better, depending on your viewpoint. And sometimes Cambridge Analytica happens, right? And so these networks are constantly evolving, and that change is a problem. And what record-keeping approach you have that works today may not work tomorrow, or there may be a new avenue to generate records that's not covered yet. At the end of the day, there's no guarantee. Even if you're law enforcement, if you go to the resource pages on these social networks like Facebook, as an example, not the only network that has this information, they will tell you that law enforcement, you are free to subpoena us before content's deleted. But if you need something that's gone, then good luck, right? And if you've ever tried to subpoena one of these networks, you know it's somewhat of an impossible journey, or it can be. So at the end of the day, take away this: you can't rely on social networks to do your record keeping, and it is your obligation under public records law. Again, if you have questions about that, I'll be here to answer that in more detail. But let me give you one data-oriented viewpoint on social media being deleted. We ran the study in 2017. We randomly selected 500 government customers. Again, our focus is entirely on government. And of these 500 customers, in 1 month, we wanted to see how much content gets deleted, because our technology not only archives, but it detects deletions across all social networks. And we were stunned. Over 200,000 records deleted in 1 month. That's over 400 per customer, over 10 a day on average. Now, some customers only had 1 or 2 deletions. Some had several hundred. And it didn't really matter what size entity they were. Some of the big cities, of course, had lots of deletions, but we had customers under 30,000 population that had over 100 deleted records in 1 month. That's a lot of content that disappears. 95% of the customers had something deleted in 1 month. So chances are that if you're on social media, and you're not keeping records, you've already lost records. Now, hopefully that content was of administrative value, but surely in the mix of your social media, there's record worth retaining and that's required to be retained. And it's possible you would have lost it if you're not doing something to keep records. So again, starting today, think about record keeping however you choose to do it. I'll try to provide some guidance here. And again, remember, this is not just you deleting, it's oftentimes the citizens deleting or citizens closing down their Facebook accounts or their other social networking accounts. which does remove all of their content due to privacy concerns. So a lot of ways that content can be deleted. So what can you do about it? Now I'm going to wrap up here with some options, and we'll turn to questions. There's really 3 different avenues here. One is to, rely on the social networks. The other I mentioned taking screenshots, and the third is to have some kind of automated software to archive for you. And so I wanted to go through some of the characteristics to look for here. Again, the simple message is that relying on the social networks, you can certainly it's certainly an option for you if you get a records request tomorrow. Go back to Facebook or YouTube and try to find that information, and it may be there. That's certainly an option, but there's really no record keeping. There's no capture. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not, right? And it's very, again, likely that some content's been deleted or edited. So you can use the limited search features and try to produce the records, and some folks have gotten by that, but that's not a long-term strategy and not one that gives a lot of folks peaceful sleep at night. The next best thing to do is to be more proactive with screenshotting. Now you can be selective where you see a problematic conversation forming and you start to take screenshots, or you decide to remove something, you take screenshots. And that's a good strategy, but again, you never know what becomes an issue. As those of you who've been in government for a long time, and use social media for any amount of time, you never know what becomes a big issue. So a lot of agencies that we've worked with actually found themselves actively taking screenshots all the time. So spending anywhere from 10 to 40 hours a month screenshotting just in case. Now that's a lot of time on your part to keep records. And these are okay records, right? You can certainly use them and refer to them better than no record, but anything can be photoshopped. You can't sit there screenshotting a ongoing conversation that has a lot of engagement and have every comment. You're just going to miss stuff. So again, very limited. So you do want to look for archiving software. Ultimately, if you're truly serious about fulfilling your public records requirements and being in compliance with your records law and being protected, some kind of archiving software. Things to look for are the ability to capture the content as soon as possible before it gets edited or deleted. Again, the ability to not only retain deleted content before it gets deleted, but be able to produce it and figure out what's been deleted and hidden. Many of the records requests our customers receive are records requests for deleted and hidden content. And it makes a lot of sense. A citizen saying, hey, I feel like my First Amendment rights being violated. I want everything that's been deleted from the last 6 months. That's one of the most common records requests we get, or hidden. Metadata is important, and I can touch on that in the Q&A if folks are interested. And then certainly the ability to actually replay that conversation. So you could have all this data, but if you can't piece it back together in any way that, in any kind of reasonable fashion, it's going to be really, really hard to respond to a records request. And it creates a lot of risk if you respond in a piecemeal fashion, because then folks feel like you're hiding something, and it creates a lot of back and forth. So you need some way to reconstruct the conversations, put those comments back together in line with the overall post, all the multimedia. If there's live video content, make sure that was captured. A lot of complexity there that you want to have handled by the software that you choose. And on this idea of replay and reconstruction, again, on the left side, if you do a records request search for anything in any system that has a lot of content, you'll get a mixed bag of results. Some comments, some private messages, a tweet here, there, a Facebook post, a YouTube video. And if you were to hand just a mixed bag of random results to somebody, again, you really aren't responding to a records request. So what you need to be able to do is reconstruct it. So whatever comments match your search need to be pulled back together into the conversation they belong to in a way that makes sense. So anyone receiving this can go, okay, here's the whole conversation, here's the whole context. Oh, and the highlights are what actually matched my records request. So that's the idea there. And at the end of the day, the decision for you to make is around your level of risk. Again, relying on the networks puts you in a very high level of risk of non-compliance. So think about how you can reduce that. Screenshots will help a little bit, but it could be a lot of effort. Now, screenshots don't really cost you dollars out of the wallet, so that's a consideration to make. But ultimately, you do want to look for how do you fulfill your records responsibilities, because records requests are becoming more and more common around social media, just like that happened with email 20 years ago. And archiving software exists, and you can evaluate your various options, but that's the way to get to full coverage. And I think what's surprising for a lot of folks is that most archiving software that you look at, because it's cloud-based, is oftentimes a discretionary spend under $5,000 annual. So it's not a lot of cost actually compared to email systems and other systems from the past. So hopefully that gives you some good guidance on what to think about. Social media is a must-have for your agency. I'm sure you were convinced of that listening to Brian. Records requests are happening more and more across social media, and it is important to be proactive on this issue, because when you get that records request, it's already too late. Risk is one of those things where you don't need it until you need it. So think about the various policies and technology that you need to include record keeping. And on that note, I'm going to wrap up here, but if we can be helpful to you at Archive Social, we're more than happy, of course, to hop on the phone. The kinds of things that we like to talk about, we like to not talk about our product at the gate. We like to talk about you and your requirements. So what are your public requirements in your state? What has the Secretary of State's office or the archive said about your state and what you need to do? We're happy to connect you with agencies around you that have chosen to archive and have various other policies in place if they can be helpful to you. And then, of course, tell you about records requests and legal situations really near you. We have compiled, with the work we do, we're at the center of more than 1,800 agencies now using social media. And so more than likely, we have a records request maybe within your county, with your next door neighbor, certainly within your state. And so we can help you understand the kinds of records requests that you may not have seen in the news, so that you can correlate that to your social media and understand what you need to do. So these are the kinds of things that we like to do on our first phone call, talk about you and the issues. If any one of these is interesting to you, we're going to put up a quick poll. If you're interested in talking to us on these topics, go ahead and pick your answer and we'll reach out to you. And with that, I'm going to hand back, while you're filling out the poll, hand back to Stephanie. I know we have a few more minutes left for questions. I'm excited to tackle those.
Great. Thanks, Anil. Yes, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the question box now. I know we've got a bunch. We'll try and get through a bunch of them as quickly as we can. And then if you want to have somebody from Archive Social contact you about, which agencies near you are archiving or anything about public records requirements in your state, go ahead and click that poll. It's optional. So going through these questions here, Brian, a lot of them are for you.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Kathy wants to know, do you have one or two meme generators you would recommend?
Sometimes what I'll do is, find the photo that I'm looking for, and just and then upload it to Canva, put the text on myself. I think that there is I'm trying to think what I've done, like the one with that screen cap from The Revenant, and then the one from Star Wars. I think those were through memegenerator.net maybe. So there you can Google meme generator websites. They'll be free. You'll find all the popular memes, and then you can plug in your text, download it, and shock your residents that you're just as cool as they are.
Okay, great. Love it. Kathy from Meriden, Connecticut. Hi, Kathy. She wants to know, what are the best times to post on social media, and do you use Twitter?
I'll answer the second one first. We don't currently use Twitter, and this is a personal opinion. I have some concerns about I have concerns about Twitter as a platform. It seems to be falling in popularity, and I have seen some studies that confirm that. But that doesn't mean don't use it. And the reason being, and I'm still considering adopting it, because I do know that news media does kind of prefer Twitter, because they can look at it. It's quick. They aren't sorting through a bunch of stuff. It's here now. And I've seen one of the most effective uses of Twitter that I've seen is the Austin, Texas, their police department, the Austin Police Department. They will say, press, be here at this, be on this corner at this time for a press conference. And so there, I still think there's some application. We don't use it. I just don't seem to have enough residents there to support it. As far as times of day, the best thing to do is to get into Facebook and look at your page, get into metrics, and it will actually show you a graph of when your users are online. I find that mine peak right around noon, because think about your own life. I mean, you sit at your desk, you eat your lunch, what do? I'm going to fool around and check out what everyone else is doing. So you go on Facebook. And then I also find for us, because we tend to have a lot of families here, after 8 o'clock, usually between 8:15 and 8:45, 8:30, 8:45 is a high time for us. Why? Because all the kids go to bed. You get all the kids in bed, or the teenagers are finally busy doing what they need to do. And you can sit down, you flop on the couch, and what do? You pull out your phone. So I'm finding that I'm getting my best engagements at noon and then during around 8:15.
Interesting. That's a really common sense approach. I like that. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question, and this is one we get a lot, and I think it's always interesting to hear how our different webinar guests respond to this question. I have a feeling I have a guess for how you might respond based on your presentation, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say. So Kathy, this is another Kathy, wants to know, do you have any tips for dealing with trolls? We have one that posts something negative on every single post, even about officers who have died in the line of duty. But he's always careful never to give us grounds to remove the post, such as by using profanity, and doesn't seem interested in a constructive conversation. Is there anything you would do except ignore him?
Yeah, if he's a frequent flyer, and he's not doing anything against your social media policy, where he obviously knows how to walk that line, and that stinks. Let me be completely transparent with you really quick. While I've been on this webinar, a colleague of mine who is also a mentor and friend of mine sent me a message and said, "Hey, I just had someone make an incredibly rude comment about the on-air talent that we used in this brush and recycling video, and she's crushed, and that's the thing is, and I'm going, and my response was, people suck. I mean, and and let me just be straight up honest, and that is unfortunate that you've got someone that even on a post about a line of duty death, that you would have someone that would figure out the line, walk up to it, and not cross it because of that. I would say you could engage with them strategically, constructively, when appropriate. Otherwise, ignore it. And here's the thing: if you can get residents on your side. I had a troll the other day. We put in a solar charging station. It looks like it was donated to us by one of our industry partners here. It's a big picnic table with a solar panel shade structure over the top, and you can charge your phone. This guy lost it, and two of his comments were captured by my profanity filter. But then, you know what? I never respond. Well, I responded to him. I was like, "Hey, sorry, we didn't spend your tax dollars on this. This was a donation. We hope you still come and enjoy your time at our park." And then he just kept going. But you know what? I didn't respond to him again. But you know who did? All of our residents. I didn't have to say another word because I've been consistent enough and built a rapport with my residents that I didn't have to defend myself anymore. They came to my defense and they shouted him down. And so keep focusing on the positive. Reward those people that say, "I love your city," and turn around and tell them, "We love having residents like you." And every time you engage with those positive, focus on the positive. Don't focus on the troll. Like I said, if you engage strategically. But I think you'll find that negative Nelly, if you focus on that positive, that all of a sudden you won't have to fight that troll. Your residents will fight the troll for you.
Hey, Brian, this is Anil. That's fantastic advice on focusing on the positive and building an engagement where the community comes to support you and helps you keep that forum productive. One technical item I wanted to add on to your answer there, and Kathy, you may or may not have this in your policy already, but you talk about that person towing the line with your policy. A lot of agencies have put in their policy that off-topic commentary does violate the policy and can be moderated. So just a tip there, if you don't have off-topic in there, something to consider, particularly if this person is kind of going back to the same issue over and over again, no matter what you were talking about, you may be able to employ that off-topic clause as a grounds for moderation. Of course, you want to explain that when you do that, but that's one possibility there. And wanted to close with a plug for a webinar that we did last year called Tackling Trolls. with Rachel Reynolds out of Keller, Texas. This is part of our agency to agency series. So on that note from Brian of Be Strategic, we did a whole webinar about how you can strategically respond to those trolls in a way that does work. And so I encourage folks to check that out, and you can reach out to Stephanie offline for that link for that recording.
I got to tell you that Rachel, I love Rachel. She was actually, she was my mentee. She's a longtime friend, and she was my mentee in the Certified Public Communicator program at TCU. And if anyone, and I got to say, I hope I taught her something when I got to be her mentor, but I can tell you she taught me a lot, and dealing with trolls is one of them. So she's the expert. Definitely check out that episode.
That's great. Yes, please feel free to email me and I can send you a link to the webinar. And we also have a social media policy template that might help with coming up with putting that exact wording into your social media policy. So I can send out some resources. You can find my email on your webinar invitation. But I think we're running out of time here. So a lot of good questions. Sorry we didn't get to all of them. Brian, this was wonderful. Thanks so much for being here. And everyone else, we will send out a follow-up email with a recording of the webinar and some other resources in it as well. So we'll wrap up for today, and thanks again, everybody.